The test was still in my hand, 2 pink lines. I was standing in my own bathroom, in my own house, shaking like it was 30 degrees outside instead of a warm October evening. My whole body already knew something my mind hadn't caught up to yet. And that's when I heard my husband's voice through the old air vent above our bedroom closet. Low, careful, the kind of careful you only use when you don't want to be heard. She doesn't suspect a thing. We just need 5 more months. Get through the holidays, get through the refinance, and then I file. And then my sister's voice answered him. 5 months, Marcus, that's all. Then it's you, me, and this house. I want you to sit with that for a second, the way I had to. Because I didn't scream. I didn't drop the test. I stood completely still, one hand pressed against a piece of plastic that was about to change my entire life, the other pressed flat against the wall, listening to my husband and my own sister divide up my future like it was a spreadsheet they'd been working on for weeks. If you've ever had a moment where the floor didn't just drop out from under you, but you had to stand on it anyway and smile, stay with me tonight, because what I did over the next 5 months is not what anyone expects. Not even me, looking back. My name is Catherine. I was 34 years old, and up until that moment, I thought I had exactly the life I was supposed to want. I'd spent 11 years working my way up at the regional hospital outside our small Ohio town, most of it in the emergency room, the last 2 as charge nurse. If you've ever worked in an ER, you know that job doesn't leave much of you left over by the end of a shift. I came home most nights smelling like hand sanitizer and other people's worst days, and I loved it anyway, because it meant something. My husband, Marcus, was a project manager for a construction firm across the county. We'd been married 5 years, together for 7. We had the house, a 4-bedroom colonial we'd stretched ourselves thin to afford, a golden retriever named Cooper who slept at the foot of our bed every night, and an HOA that fined you if your trash can sat at the curb a minute past 6 p.m. From the outside, we looked like the couple on the holiday card. For a long time, I believed we were. My younger sister, Vanessa, is 2 years behind me, and she has always been the one who lit up a room the second she walked into it. I never resented her for that. I loved her. I still love her, if I'm honest, even now, even after everything I'm about to tell you. About a year and a half before that October night, Vanessa went through a brutal divorce of her own. Her ex had drained their joint savings 3 days before she even found out he was leaving. She showed up on our porch with 2 suitcases and mascara running down her face, and Marcus didn't even blink. She stays in the basement as long as she needs, he said. Family's family. I remember feeling so grateful to him in that moment. I thought, this is a good man. This is a man who takes care of people. I had no idea how wrong I would turn out to be or how long it would take me to see it. Looking back now, I think that's exactly where it started. Not with some dramatic, sweeping affair, just proximity. 2 people sharing coffee at 7 in the morning, sharing quiet complaints about how much I worked, while I was pulling 60-hour weeks trying to hold together a short-staffed ER, too tired most nights to notice the space slowly opening up in my own home. Before we dive deeper, welcome to Scars and Stories, and if you are new here, let us know where you are watching from in the comments. We will love to hear from you. I need you to really feel this part, because I think about it constantly. How many marriages don't fall apart because of one big, dramatic betrayal? They fall apart quietly, in the small rooms, while one person is too exhausted and too trusting to notice. I was that person. For 18 months, I was exactly that person, and I never saw it coming. That Tuesday in October, I left work 4 hours early. I told my supervisor I had a migraine, and that wasn't entirely a lie. I did have a headache, the kind that comes from stress you haven't found a name for yet. I'd been feeling off for almost 3 weeks, tired in a way sleep didn't fix, nauseous some mornings. And I was late, 3 weeks late, which for someone as regular as a Swiss watch was not nothing. I bought a test on the way home and sat in my own driveway for almost 10 minutes before I could make myself walk inside. That little box sitting on the passenger seat like it might go off if I moved too fast. The house was quiet. Marcus's truck was in the driveway, unusual for a Tuesday afternoon, but I didn't think anything of it. I went straight upstairs, closed the bathroom door, and did the test with shaking hands, telling myself it was probably nothing, probably just stress. 2 lines, immediate, dark, unmistakable. I pressed my hand flat against my stomach and just breathed, already picturing how I'd tell him, already picturing his face lighting up the way it used to when we talked about someday having kids of our own. And that is the exact moment I heard voices through that old vent, and everything about my life split cleanly into before and after. At first I thought it was the television, then I heard my name. "Catherine's going to be devastated," Vanessa said. Not sad, not guilty. Almost, and I hate that this is the word that comes to mind, amused. "She'll be fine," Marcus answered. "She's tough. She always lands on her feet. That's kind of the problem, actually." I didn't move. I don't think I even blinked. My heart wasn't racing the way you'd expect in a moment like that. It was doing the opposite. Slowing down. Going cold and quiet and sharp, like something inside me had already decided it was time to start paying very close attention. "The refinance closes in November," Marcus went on. "Once that's done, the equity's locked and clean, both our names on it fresh. After the holidays, I tell her it's not working. No affair to point to, nothing messy for her to fight over. She takes the settlement, we split it fair on paper, and you and I start over." "And the bonus?" Vanessa asked. "Already talked to a guy at the firm. If I time the filing after my bonus vests in January, her half gets calculated on the numbers from before it. She'll never know the difference." I want you to understand something about that exact moment, because it's the part people ask me about the most. It wasn't only the affair, though God knows that alone would have leveled me completely. It was the math of it. My husband had built a financial exit strategy around my life with the same careful precision most people put into planning a kitchen renovation. Line items, timing, numbers on a private spreadsheet, and I was simply one of them, a variable he thought he'd already solved for. If you've ever felt that specific kind of cold, the kind where your body understands something before your mind has caught up to it, I want you to tell me in the comments, because I don't think enough people talk about that feeling. It isn't the same as anger. It's quieter, stranger, almost clinical. I didn't scream. I didn't run downstairs. I didn't throw anything, though God knows some part of me pictured it. Instead, I did something that surprised even me. I sealed the test inside a sandwich bag, tucked it into a zippered pocket in my purse, and walked downstairs like absolutely nothing in the world had happened. I told Marcus I had a migraine and was going to lie down. He kissed my forehead. He asked if I wanted ginger ale. He called me babe, the same way he had 1,000 times before, and I let him, because I already understood something he didn't know I understood yet. That night, lying beside the man who was quietly drafting my exit paperwork in his head, I made a decision that would shape the next 5 months of my life. I wasn't going to cry. I wasn't going to beg. I was going to be smarter than both of them combined, and they were never going to see it coming. The next morning, I called in sick for the first time in almost 4 years. I drove 40 minutes to a family law attorney in the next county over, deliberately far from home, deliberately outside the small web of people who might mention seeing my car to someone who knew Marcus. Her name was Diane Whitfield, and she had the calm, unbothered energy of a woman who had heard every version of this story before and was no longer surprised by any of them. I sat across from her desk and told her everything: the pregnancy, the vent, the refinance, the bonus timing, and she wrote for a long time without saying much. Then she looked up at me and said something I still carry with me. "Our state cares a great deal about hidden assets and dissipation of marital property. But right now, all you have is what you overheard. We need proof, and proof takes patience." Then she said the sentence that changed how I moved through every single day that followed. "Act like nothing happened. Let me build the case. Let them keep believing they're the ones with the plan." I have to be honest with you. That was the hardest role I have ever played in my entire life. Harder than nursing school. Harder than the worst overnight shift I've ever worked. I went home that night and made Marcus's favorite dinner. I laughed at his story about a coworker's terrible golf swing. I sat across the table from my sister and asked about her freelance photography clients, and she answered with that same easy smile, not knowing that I now understood exactly what it was hiding underneath. If you've ever had to smile at someone while your whole body was silently screaming, you already know what those weeks cost me. But quietly, underneath all of it, I was becoming someone else. A version of myself that watched, that documented, that waited without ever once letting my face give me away. Here's something most people don't realize about joint finances. Convenience has a long memory, even after you've forgotten it exists. About 2 years earlier, back when Marcus and I were trying to get more organized with our budget, we'd set up a credit monitoring app linked to both our names. It had been his idea, actually, back when we still built things together instead of around each other. He'd long since forgotten about it. I hadn't. 3 days after the event, I opened that app for the first time in months, and there it was. A new account at a credit union 2 towns over, one Marcus had never once mentioned. Small deposits at first, $200 here, $300 there. The kind of amount specifically designed not to raise a flag, because it wasn't coming out of any account I could see. He was quietly building a private cushion, dollar by careful dollar, and I was the only person who knew it existed. I took screenshots. I dated every single one. I sent them to Diane the same week, and she told me something I hadn't expected. This pattern alone, this quiet, deliberate cushion building right before a planned filing, was already something a judge would take very seriously. Then came the refinance paperwork. Marcus brought it home about 10 days later, cheerful, casual, sliding the folder across our kitchen island like it was nothing at all. Just a formality, he said. Locks in a better rate before it climbs again. What it actually did, Diane confirmed this the moment I brought it to her, was quietly reset the equity split on paper in a way that would make the house far easier to divide in his favor, right before he planned to blindside me with the rest. I told him I wanted to read it carefully before I signed anything. That's my careful wife, he said, and kissed the top of my head. I never signed it. I just kept saying I needed a little more time, and he never once questioned why, because why would he? He believed he still had 5 months to spare. I have to tell you about the night I nearly gave everything away, because it's the moment my hands shook harder than they had even with the test in them. About 3 weeks in, I went back to that same closet. I told myself I wasn't going to make it a habit, but I needed to know if anything in the timeline had shifted. I heard Vanessa's voice, quieter this time, worried. She's been weird lately, distracted. You don't think she knows, do you? There was a pause so long I stopped breathing entirely. No, Marcus finally said. She's just tired. She's always tired. That's Catherine. Something twisted hard in my chest at that, at being so thoroughly, so confidently underestimated by the 2 people who were supposed to know me best in the world. But underneath the hurt, something else was quietly taking shape. Something closer to resolve than pain. Then I heard footsteps starting toward the door, and I nearly knocked a hanger loose scrambling out of that closet and down the hallway. I made it to our bathroom and had the sink running by the time Marcus's footsteps passed our bedroom door on his way downstairs. I sat on the edge of the tub for a long time afterward, one hand pressed over my mouth, my heart pounding so loud I could hear it in my own ears. That was the night I truly understood what I'd become. I wasn't just gathering evidence anymore. I was living 2 entirely separate lives under one roof, and only one person in that house knew both of them existed. If you want to understand what it feels like to sit at a table full of people who love you, holding a secret bigger than the meal in front of you, let me tell you about Thanksgiving that year. We hosted, the way we did every year. Vanessa brought wine and a smile that, once I knew what I knew, looked almost predatory to me, though I'm certain to everyone else at that table she looked exactly like herself. At one point, my mother, a few glasses of wine in, leaned across the table and asked when Marcus and I were finally going to give her grandchildren. Marcus forced a laugh and wouldn't meet my eyes. We're working on it, he said. I just smiled and passed the mashed potatoes down the table. I was 14 weeks pregnant that night. He had absolutely no idea. That dinner is the closest I ever came to breaking, watching my mother laugh at his jokes. Watching my sister help clear the plates like she wasn't quietly planning to take my place in that house within the year. I excused myself twice that evening, once to check on dessert, and really just to stand alone in the pantry with my eyes closed, breathing, holding myself together with both hands. But I made it through, and 2 days later, I called Diane and told her I was done waiting for January. Here is something I learned that mattered more than almost anything else in this entire story. In many states, whoever files for divorce first can request an immediate freeze on major marital financial transactions, before the other side even knows a case exists. Marcus's entire plan depended on that refinance closing quietly, on his bonus vesting exactly on schedule, on months of runway he still believed belonged to him. I wasn't going to give him any of it. In the first week of December, 6 weeks after that night at the vent, 5 weeks before his bonus was due to vest, I filed. Diane requested the financial freeze that same day, and it hit the refinance, the joint accounts, and the credit union account he thought I knew nothing about. I also disclosed the pregnancy in that filing. Marcus found out he was going to be a father the exact same afternoon he was served divorce papers, at his desk, in front of 2 coworkers, during a project meeting whose timing I still think about more than I probably should. I wasn't there to see his face. I've wondered 1,000 times since whether I regret that, and I still don't have a clean answer. Some days I'm grateful I never had to watch it happen. Vanessa called that night. I let it ring 4 times before I picked up. "What is wrong with you?" she said, her voice cracking somewhere between fury and disbelief. "You didn't even talk to him first. You just blindsided him." My own voice came out so calm it almost didn't feel like mine. "That's interesting," I said, "considering he was planning to blindside me at Christmas, after locking our home equity into a refinance the 2 of you discussed in my own basement." Through my vent, Vanessa. Silence, a long, dead silence on the other end of the line. "I know exactly what I heard," I told her. "The bonus timing. The part where you said I'd be devastated and you sounded almost happy about it." She hung up. I sat there with the phone still in my hand for a long time afterward, staring at the ceiling, feeling something I hadn't expected. Not triumph, not yet. Just an enormous, exhausted stillness, like I'd finally set down something I'd been carrying with both arms for 6 straight weeks. When the court granted me temporary exclusive use of our home, I sat Vanessa down at our kitchen table, the same table we'd carved pumpkins at as children, and I gave her 30 days to find somewhere else to live. She asked me, honestly bewildered, where she was supposed to go. I told her it stopped being my problem the night the 2 of them sat in my basement dividing up my future like it was nothing more than a garage sale. She moved back in with our mother, and for the first time in my sister's entire life, our mother did not take her side. I think that, more than anything else in this story, is what finally broke something open in her. Marcus's finances did not survive what came next. The hidden account, the pattern of careful cash withdrawals, the refinance paperwork drafted weeks before he ever mentioned it to me, all of it went in front of a judge who used a phrase Diane later told me she loved hearing from the bench: deliberate dissipation of marital assets. Because the refinance never closed, the house was appraised fresh, at its true current value, with none of his quiet planning baked into the numbers. I kept the house. He kept his truck, his tools, and significantly less than he'd ever mapped out for himself. And his January bonus, the very thing his entire timeline had been built around, vested 3 weeks after I filed, meaning every single dollar of it counted as marital property. I gave birth to my daughter, Sophie, the following June. Marcus wasn't in the room. He sees her every other weekend now, on a schedule set by a court, nothing more and nothing less than what the paperwork allows. He lives in a 2-bedroom apartment near the interstate. About a year later, I heard through a mutual friend that he'd started seeing someone new, someone he met, of all places, in line at a hardware store. Vanessa wasn't invited into that new chapter of his life. Last I heard, she's still living with our mother, and the 2 of them have barely spoken since that phone call in December. I'm sitting in my kitchen as I tell you this. The same kitchen table. The same house they once planned to divide between themselves without ever asking whether I'd be standing in the wreckage of it. My daughter is asleep upstairs. My dog is curled by the back door, the way he always is at this hour. People ask me sometimes if I regret staying quiet that first night. If I wish I'd screamed, thrown something, said everything I was feeling the second I heard it through that vent. I don't, not for one single second. Because the version of me that stood in that closet and said nothing, and walked downstairs and made dinner like my whole world hadn't just quietly ended and begun again in the same breath. That is the version of me that gave my daughter a home nobody could ever take from her. That is the version of me that never once had to beg for what was already mine. If there's one thing I hope you carry with you after hearing this, it's that the loudest reaction in a moment like that is almost never the strongest one. Sometimes the most powerful thing a person can do is stay quiet just long enough to build something nobody can ever take away from them again.